So hi, my name is Kerry and I'm CEO and founder of the Holistic Highway. And let me tell you a little bit about myself so that you know who you're talking to. As I said, my name's Kerry. I'm an Ayurveda practitioner. I have degrees in neuroscience and in education, and I'm part of the University of Pittsburgh Center for Integrative Medicine. And here in my clinical practice, we really focus on the science behind this system of medicine. That way we can really get the benefit of Western thought and Eastern wisdom too. And along the way, while I'm doing all that, I get to meet some pretty awesome people. And one of the people that, the person that I have met that I really want to introduce you to today is Veronique. And she came to us just over a year ago, I think, wasn't it? And has been in a program with us for a year. And we will certainly talk about that later. But more importantly, Veronique is a yoga instructor. And it's such a big part of her world and such an important part of her world that I thought, wouldn't it be neat to sort of talk to her about what she does, how she got there, and her life in general. But Veronique, start by introducing yourself to us and do it through sort of how I met you. And when I met you, you had some pretty consistent health issues with some gastritis, some digestive problems, sleep problems. What were you looking for when you came to the Holistic Highway or when you came into a program with us?
Yes, first of all, thank you so much, Kerry, for speaking with me. This is such a treat to connect, and we've had such a phenomenal relationship over the past year through my Holistic Highway journey, and your support, and we'll get to, has been so life-changing for mind, body, and spirit. Everything has just really, really shifted in the most positive way. And when we first got together, it actually, I was looking for an easy way to not cook. And I was looking for meals that could be delivered to my house that were fresh and ready to go. And I was getting different pings from different community, like friends and family, but people that didn't know one another. Several people out of the blue were saying, you should really look into Ayurveda. And this was specifically because of this huge amount of stress that I was under with Hurricane Dorian coming to potentially wipe out the first home that I owned. There was a lot of unknown, and I kind of fell down the rabbit hole of watching the news all of the time because everything shut down. And so I just worked myself up. I think it was sort of the straw that killed the camel's back sort of thing. Like, I didn't think that I was that stressed out at the time, but I worked myself up to be really stressed out. And I was having a really hard time letting go of that, even after the hurricane came and went. And luckily, everything was fine here in Florida. But I still had this sort of feeling in my stomach of this tension that I couldn't shake. And as we talked about in our sessions, I did end up having gastritis, this inflammation of the stomach. And even though I went to the doctors and they said that I could, take these pills and be fine. And then I went to an acupuncturist and they're like, we just don't know what's wrong with you. And then I don't know why I had to take this long journey to Ayurveda, because it has been on my mind for so long, because as you know, it's a sister science to yoga. And so it makes so much sense that I would journey there, but I guess I just felt like I needed to come to it at the time that I did. And then when I did, I thought, okay, this is going to be the key to understanding not only what I put into my body, but what it is I'm consuming as a whole. And so just getting really intelligent about the rituals that I have in the morning and getting really clear on why I'm putting whatever in my body, and getting also just really curious about, like, not just nutrition, but specifically to my dosha, right? So we talked many times before of, like, you could think a strawberry is very healthy for you, but depending on the season and depending on your dosha and things like that, it might not necessarily be. And so that really cracked a really big opening in my mind of getting really curious about oh, maybe there's things that I'm doing that are seemingly healthy, but they're just not in alignment with my dosha. And because I am very pitta, when I'm out of balance, I feel like I'm like really out of balance, because I am the kind of person that if I go for something, I go for it full on, like, watch out, I'm here for it. And so I had reached this point where I felt like I'm not sleeping, I'm overheating, my stomach is a mess, I have an autoimmune disease, and I just feel generally inflamed, which isn't to say that I wasn't happy and thriving and having beautiful relationships with all of my friends and family. It was like this thing that was just kind of this undercurrent, and I didn't really know, or I didn't have the tools, or maybe I wasn't ready to seek that soothing and cooling energy to get a handle on it. And so when you and I had our first consultation and you really introduced me to Ayurveda and specifically to my dosha, what are the things that I'm doing that's actually inflammatory to my system? We started off with a cleanse, and I just did like a completely like rinse out of all of the things. And it was so hard to do. Probably the hardest thing that I did last year was give up coffee. And so for those of you that know me know like what a big deal that is. I used to wear shirts like all I need is yoga and coffee. Like I was definitely that person. But I just started to really question why. And it came back to one of the yoga sutras, Svadhyaya, self-study, and really asking the question of, is what I'm doing habitual in terms of I'm just sort of on autopilot living my life doing this thing, and I'm doing this thing because I've always done it, or am I doing it in the space where it's actually serving and I feel like it's in the space where I'm actually to thrive and feel like I'm able to shine as vibrant as possible and like really show up for people and feel inspired and inspiring, and that we're building something together, right? Like if I'm feeling lit up and like at my fullest, then I hope that that's infectious, right? That all the lives that I touch are also feeling that way. And so as we came to really just tuning into, and we went through all of the seasons, right, of figuring out how the change of oil and the change of the morning ritual and like guiding me to wake up earlier and really investing the energy to prepare somewhat my foods, right? I'm still a reluctant cook, but I'm trying, right? I carve out as much as I can. We all have our threshold for certain things, but it's all a learning process. And I think because I came to you at a place where I was really open to it, all of the marks of the things that were super inflamed were really low, right? And then by the end of the year, they were up to 8 to 10. So 0, for those of you who don't know, would be like, this is at the worst. And then 10, like, I feel great. This is the best I've ever been. And so it's definitely been a journey, and I'm so, so grateful to have met you. I think so much has shifted in the most positive light, and I'm so glad that we're connected now.
That's great. So let's backtrack a little bit. And I love how you sort of took that circuitous route to Ayurveda, even though it's a sister science to yoga. And many people might not realize that yoga was never taught without Ayurveda, and Ayurveda was never taught without yoga at one time. We've separated it here in the West, so now we have this whole stream of Ayurveda and the whole stream of yoga. But yoga is about self-enlightenment, reaching self-enlightenment through the asanas, through those movement postures, if I'm right. And it is, I mean, it's hard to think of anything else except for standing on one leg when you're standing on one leg. So you can't really be worried about what you're cooking for dinner when you're trying to balance. So it's very much in the moment mindfulness. Whereas Ayurveda says, but you have to be healthy enough to stand on one leg in the first place. So Ayurveda takes that sort of more practical, okay, let's look after your health. Whereas yoga then goes into that sort of more spiritual realm of this is how you reach absolute joy. This is how you do it, but you got to be healthy to do it. So sounds like you also took a circuitous route to get to yoga too. So you started off in Canada, one of my favorite cities, Montreal, And then I don't know how you made it to Florida from there, but you also studied theater, which is very different from yoga. So how did you get from studying theater, and obviously I assume you wanted to do things with it, to then becoming a yoga teacher? Tell us that story.
Oh my goodness. Yes. So I love theater. I grew up, as many of us do, performing for our families in our living rooms. And I have just always loved storytelling. I've loved bringing people together, and I've loved creativity. And those have been the seeds throughout my entire memory bank of existence. And when I was first introduced to yoga, I had little samplings of it when I lived in Los Angeles, but I didn't really come to it really until I lived in New York City. And this is so funny. As I'm saying this, I'm realizing the connection of hurricanes, because I never put that together. So it was during Hurricane Sandy in New York City. And I mean, who has a hurricane in New York City? It's like never happened, but there I was. I don't know, maybe it's me. They're just drawn to me. So all of the subways were closed down. Everything was shut down. And my roommate at the time and I were going stir crazy. I think it was like day 3, like nothing was happening. Even Broadway shut down. It was a really big deal. And we found out that the local yoga studio was open. And so my roommate at the time, Matt, he says, "Do you want to go?" I said, "Yes, get me out of here." And I didn't really have that background. It was something that I just sort of peripherally knew about, but I thought, oh yeah, I could definitely relax and chill out for a little bit. So we went, and it was the most amazing transformational class. It was 90 minutes, a mixture of vinyasa, which is, movement to breath, and restorative, which is more relaxing. You're laying down with bolsters and blankets and all of the support, and it's really luxurious. And I left that class feeling like I want to feel like this all of the days. And I went to the woman at the front desk and I said, "I need a monthly unlimited pass. I'm going to be here every day." I'm all in. And I proceeded to go every day. I felt really at home there. And I started to feel, as much as I loved theater and I loved the community of bringing people together and producing shows, there was a lot of drama, as you can imagine, in the entertainment industry. There's a lot of very heightened personalities, and a lot of things don't go as planned. And because you have things that don't go as planned with heightened personalities, like everything just gets really stressful very quickly. And I'm a very empathetic person and I feel things very deeply, and to be in that environment consistently for a very long period of time, I think it wore on me more than I let on or that I realized at the time. And so yoga became my safe haven, and I developed friendships there, and I felt really connected. And there wasn't the competition like there was in entertainment. Like everyone was there and super supportive, and I felt like, wow, if this is how it is just to practice, I wonder if I could become a yoga instructor and just feel like this all the time. And I resisted for a long time. So many people had said, "Oh, you should be a yoga instructor." And I said, "Oh no, like I actually really love it. I don't want to taint it." And then it wasn't until my husband, Brandon, he said, "Veronique, you love this and it's calling to you, and you can offer this to people in a way that includes your storytelling, includes your creativity, and it melds your worlds together." And I thought, okay, I could get friendly with that. And so I decided to I was signed up for a yoga retreat with my mom. She and I have an annual ritual of going on yoga retreats in different parts of the world together. And she looked at the one that we had planned. there happened to have been a yoga teacher training the week before. And so she said, do you want to go the week before and do this yoga teacher training? And I said, well, that's pretty serendipitous. I think I should. And that was such a life-changing experience. I mean, I think I was just really, really fortunate that first class and this yoga teacher training, it just felt like exactly where I was meant to be. And I just, let's see, what year is it? Just this past December of 2019, I decided to let go of acting and theater completely. I don't know if you know this, but I had started my own nonprofit theater company back in 2002. So after 17 years, decided to close that, which was one of the hardest decisions of my life. And it was not until March of 2020 when the pandemic hit and all of theater closed, where I thought maybe it was meant to happen. Maybe I let it ride the wave for the amount of time that it was meant to. And I feel so much more peaceful now than I ever have.
You know, that's an amazing story. And it's interesting that you gave up theatre in spring, because if we go back to our sort of seasonal consultations, spring is the time that we burst forth and we let go of things that keep us in a place of where we used to be, not who we're going to become. So it was interesting that all that happened in spring. And then you hit the COVID year, and that's been high anxiety for almost everybody, no matter their situation. What were the challenges for you this past year, and sort of what has been the biggest challenge for you and still is a challenge for you?
Probably my biggest challenge to date is, as much as I really practice presencing and being in the now, I am always also planning for the future. I am such a fan of to-do lists. I love a bullet journal where I write down all the to-do lists, and I love this action of crossing things off. It's maybe one of my favorite experiences.
You know, I have to interrupt you there and say, there speaks a pitter, because pitters love to-do lists, and they'll even write things down if they've already done it, just so they can cross it off. So yes,
I do that. Yes, it's my favorite. Yeah. So I think right now the biggest challenge is I'm planning for a yoga retreat to lead my own in March of 2022, which I'm really, really excited about. It's going to be in a beautiful resort on Isla Mujeres in Mexico. And it's this cute little boutique resort with outdoor yoga practice space, outdoor dining. It's one of the really customized, and actually, I wanted to tell you this. This is so nice. This is coming up. Is I talked to the chef to see if we could get Ayurveda meals prepared, because there's only 10 villas on the property. And so we can make a customized menu specifically to the people that are on the retreat. And so I said, this would be really nice. I don't know if this is possible. And they wrote back and they said, anything is possible. Our team is outstanding culinary masters. Like, we'll do anything for you. And so that bit I'm really excited about. So I'm getting excited about the planning, but of course it's 9 months out, and it's like, I want to confirm the thing and be on the plane and then be in the place. And so I think the hardest thing for me, this is just one example, is really luxuriating in the here and the now, but also planning for the future and trusting little seeds along the way and trying not to rush it. I think that's been probably my biggest challenge my entire life, is wanting to kind of skip ahead and do things really quickly, and probably why New York City was a good pace for me, because I have a lot of energy, and so I like to move things at a certain pace. And so trying as much as I can to slow down and really enjoy what's happening in the moment, definitely the biggest challenge right now. and probably for a little bit.
So what's always interesting with somebody who has a lot of high pitta, which is very much sort of, next project, is they can burn out. And often pittas become just unmotivated. They become less focused, just not quite so motivated. And they often come to me in midlife and say, fix it. I used to be sharp and I want to be back to who I used to be. So go ahead, Kerry, fix it. And that's a pitta talking. But you sort of spent the year with us and you've learned some good tools in your toolbox, your Ayurveda toolbox and your yoga toolbox along the way. But what do you do to stay motivated? What gets you going? Because I think there's an assumption that a yoga teacher is always calm and peaceful, always mindful, always eats correct, chants psalm as they're brushing their teeth. And that's just not so. Many yoga teachers are very harried, frustrated, and live just like we all do. So how do you manage that?
So a lot of things, and I've not changed all of this overnight. I've implemented these things over the past 3 years that has, I think, cumulatively, and we've talked about this too, that it isn't just one thing. It's all of these things put together that sort of fit together in this perfect puzzle to feel like, okay, everything is in place, right? There isn't like a pill to take or like a one fix all, something that you can do. So I'll just share with you some of the things that have been really instrumental in shifting my ability to show up as present and as energetic as I am. And so I kind of have to start with the evening before. It's like a chicken egg situation, whether to talk about the morning or the evening first, because they kind of intersect and play off of one another. But so starting with the evening before, it's so important to me to get myself in bed by 9:30 at the latest so that I have time to read. And I really take care to eliminate screen time if I can after 5 p.m. Sometimes I peek on things if I need to check something really quickly, but I'm not on there like, working on a big project or something like that. So airplane mode is huge, right? So that the binging isn't happening while you're sleeping. I'm really strict these days of lights out at 10 p.m. so that I'm going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time. I used to be all over the place depending on what my schedule is, because my entire life I've never had like a set schedule where it's like, okay, I'm showing up to work at this time, like all the days are different from the next. So that has been really huge. So I make sure to have my phone on airplane mode or do not disturb at the very latest 10 p.m. And then I try not to look at it until 10 a.m. the next day to really give myself that time of without the chatter, without the distractions. And one of the yoga teachers that I had, she said, when you have notifications come up, and I also have my notifications turned off except for text messages and phone calls. So like I do recommend to everyone to turn off the notifications, because it's like you're in the middle of a conversation and a notification is the equivalent of someone coming by you and just shoving you in the shoulder. It like completely takes you out of what you were doing. And so that really resonated with me. So I have my notifications turned off. And so I sleep from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And this is so crazy as a former coffee drinker. Like I never would wake up before my alarm beforehand. And I would always sort of like drag myself out of bed and have to have at least 3 cups before I could form sentences. I'm exaggerating a little bit. But now I wake up and I try, if I can, allow myself 3 hours before my first appointment and 2 hours at the very least, if possible. And so that includes my Ayurveda rituals of oils and herbs. And I also meditate and journal, and I read from the book Journey to the Heart by Melody Beattie. It's a daily, so I love that to just start the day. And then I commit to some kind of movement practice. It doesn't have to be yoga. And in fact, I like switching up different modalities just to keep the creativity. Sometimes I pull from dance and different things into the yoga practice, just so it's always creative and always inspiring to people. One of the things that I really love is that every class that I teach is unique. I'm not sort of rote repeating the same thing over and over. I like it for my mental clarity, kind of exercising those muscles, and I like it experiencing in that way as well. So after I've done all of that, I feel like I'm ready for anything. Because then I can read an email, and maybe it's an emotionally charged email, and I have this like superhero force on because I'm already filled up, and then I can reply to it. But oftentimes I don't. That's like the other thing that I've learned, is not responding right away if I feel like I can't respond in the best light possible, right? So it's about filling your own cup first, right, before you can give to others. And so that's really the biggest part that I found, is making sure that I'm fed, right? Not just the food that I'm putting in my body, but like mentally, emotionally, spiritually, like all of the things are in alignment. And then I show up and I'm just like, here, like I have extra, take it.
You know, that's absolutely wonderful. I mean, I love how you say that, and you're talking about sort of how many of us, you know, just feel so much better when we incorporate those things, which are not so easy to do. It takes a lot of discipline. It really does, to make sure that that happens every day. And that puts you in a really good place to do what you're passionate about, which is teach yoga. And what I love about sort of yoga with Veronique is you customize your yoga practices for each individual person. So much like Ayurveda, there is no one size fits all. And there isn't with yoga. Just because you're doing yoga doesn't mean it's right for you. I mean, you're a pitta, can't take heat. If you were teaching hot yoga every single day, 5 or 6 classes, you'd soon feel it. So it's a matter of what's right for your client. So in many ways, you're practicing Ayurveda through your yoga. But when people come to you for your expertise in yoga and your individualized programs in it, what's probably one of the biggest misunderstandings that there are out there that you find when people come to you?
So like all fields, we all have a bit of preconceived notions of what one does. And as you know, yoga is something that varies quite a lot depending on the lineage, the style, the teacher, whether it's taught in a private session, a group class, a workshop, what the setting is, right? If you're taking yoga at a gym or in a school or a community room, a yoga studio on a luxurious retreat, all of these variables, right? And probably one of the misunderstood things that I often hear is someone will say, oh, I tried yoga once, it's not for me. And so I'm so curious about that. Like, you know, what style was that? You know, how was the teacher? Where were you? I have questions. And oftentimes they don't quite know how to answer, right? Because they don't know the different styles. So they're like, I don't know, like we did these shapes. and so I'll often say, I really encourage you to try other classes. Yoga, in a way, because there's so many different styles and because there's so many different teachers and all of these things, I kind of liken it to dating, right? Like you wouldn't go on one date and be like, it's not for me. I tried it once, but I guess I'm just not going to find the love of my life, right? Like you keep dating, or maybe you found the love of your life on your first date and that worked out for you. But oftentimes, right, for yoga, there's so many like personal things, right? Like it's like you can't really psychically find the perfect fit for you necessarily the first go around. And so that's what I love particularly about working privately with clients, and I'm sure you do too as well, Carrie, is asking these questions of what is your intention or what are your goals? And then you can get a lot more specific and customize the class specifically to what they're wanting. And I'll even say, maybe I'm not your yoga teacher, right? Like, I'm not the yoga teacher for every person and just like, you know, for everyone, but maybe I can guide you to understand what it is that you're wanting. And then maybe you can find that in another person. But I think just having the dialogue can really open it up. And I do believe that yoga is for everyone. And I hope that everyone finds the right person or the right people, right? It doesn't have to be one person. You can have a core group of people, and with, you know, the current times, you could take yoga from people all over the world from the comfort of your home. So there's just so much at our fingertips now that I think it's so encouraging that there's just so much to try and explore.
And one of the things you were telling me is you do actually have people who follow you all over the world. So tell us a little bit about what you do specifically, and how can people watching you today connect with you? I mean, what's the best way to do that?
Sure. So I'd love to connect. I'm on Instagram and Twitter. We can put the spelling of my name in the description, but it's at Veronique Ori is my Instagram and Twitter, and then Facebook it's just /the Veronique Ori. And I share videos and photos with personal reflections and insights into the practice and invitations to ask yourself questions, right? So it comes back to Svadhyaya, or self-study, of finding that there's different ways that we can springboard from the physical self or from the emotional self and get a little bit more curious, right? So that you're in awe of yourself. And so that's part of my intention of showing up on those platforms as a way to inspire. I also have a private Facebook group that we can share, but if you want, you can just search under Facebook groups Yoga with Veronique, and you should be able to find me. And I am showing up really intentionally there with yoga as well as tutorials. And those are free offerings for people in my private Facebook group. I share journal prompts and my Spotify playlists and recommendations on podcasts and books and things like that. I actually am hosting a free class this evening, which is something I do once a month, and then they're archived. So if you missed it live, you can go back and do them at a later point. I have a fun freebie, which is a 7-day, 5-minute morning yoga stretch routine, because one of the biggest things that I was hearing is people are like, oh, I don't have time. I'm so busy, I don't have time, right? So 5 minutes is, I think everyone can feasibly squeeze in 5 minutes at the start of the day. And like I talked about before, and as you know, Carrie, of course, it's like the morning is such a perfect place to set the tone of your entire day. And so carving out just 5 minutes, it goes by in a blip, and you just feel so much better to connect with your breath, to connect with your body, to just quiet the mind a little bit, and then you show up a little bit more refreshed. And I have all of my offerings. I have probably 3 main offerings right now, but you can find out more on yogawithveronique.com, which we will also spell in the comments. And that includes my on-demand channel, which is a series that takes you through meditation, vinyasa, and yin deep stretch practices. And I also have a yoga private intensive, and I have a lot of information on that on my website, where you can find out more. There's little trailers and things there too, just to give you a little taste. And then if you're not quite sure, I do offer a free 15-minute consultation for first-time students, so that we can do a Zoom call and you can share with me what your intentions are, what your goals are, and we can talk about if we're able to find a yoga journey that is on the same path, and I hope that we do. And that would be, you can go to calendly.com/Veronique-Ori and then schedule it through my booking app that way, or message me on all of the other platforms that I've mentioned as well.
But remember, we don't do it after 8 o'clock at night or before 10 o'clock in the morning, because we're on airplane mode.
Exactly, exactly.
I want to really thank you for taking this time to chat with us today. And it's great fun working with you in being part of your health journey. In fact, Veronique and I are going to work together and put together some workshops together, sort of yoga and Ayurveda. I'm going to wait for her to invite me to Mexico because I didn't know about that one. But it's wonderful. So all those links she talked about will all be listed. So you'll be able to go check her out and take a class with her. She offers a lot of free classes before you ever commit to anything. So take a class with her. She's truly unique. And thank you. I really appreciate it. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you, Carrie.